الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلقه وخاتم أنبيائه وسيد رسله سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المطهرين المكرمين. قال الله العظيم في كتابه الكريم وهو أحسن القائلين وأصدق الصادقين: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. My respected scholars, elders, sisters and brothers, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. They say there was once a speaker who came to give a speech, and the first thing he said to the people who are there to listen was, "What is the topic of my lecture?" They all said, "We know the topic. We have just been told what the topic is." He said, "If you all know the topic, there is no need for me to speak." So he came down. They said, no, afwan, we don't know the topic. He said, "If you don't know the topic, then what's the point of me speaking?" Then they said, okay, half said we know the topic and half said we don't know the topic. He then said, okay, let those who know explain to those who don't. But it's of course not as simple as that. And it's a great privilege and honor for me to be able to join this particular discussion in Academy Nour and to have an insight into one of the most beautiful responsibilities Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us, each and every one of us, and that is the journey of parenting. Now, what is very fascinating is the whole concept as described in the Quran and in the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam is supposed to be something we carry on with pride and honor, not the way that sometimes some of us view it as a massive burden, as something which is painful. Today when I speak to parents, they say to me, it's one of the worst jobs in the world. To be a father or to be a mother is stressful. I have to make sure that my children are brought up in the correct tarbiyah, in the right manner, and it's not something that today if you ask parents, they enjoy it. How many parents here today can truthfully and honestly put their hands on their hearts and say, I enjoy parenting? And this is the first thing that we need to clarify in our minds. Allah Ta'ala has highlighted the status of fathers and mothers because they are in this particular position bestowed to them by Rabbul Alameen, because they will need to carry it out. But the more you do it with passion and enjoyment, the more you'll do a good job and you'll become actually quite successful. But you know, many a times we hear lectures and sermons and read books about how to nurture our children, how to bring them up in the right way. But there is a very fundamental question before any of this, which is very, very important. Why? What's the point of parenting anyway? What is it that we want to achieve? If I was to ask today some of the parents here, they would probably say, I want my child to be a good Muslim. Some will say, I want my child to be happy. Some will say, I want my child to be successful later. So that's the goal of parenting. The problem is, most of people's vision when it comes to parenting is not matched by their plan. So if I, for example, want my child to be happy, how do I parent my child? Unfortunately, sometimes what I do is I pamper them too much. I, for example, give them too much in order to make them happy, and I make them too much dependent on me, and they lose that self-confidence, or they lose the ability to think of solutions for problems themselves, because I want them always to be happy, for example. Now, one of my favorite ayat of the Quran, which is a dua, was actually one of the ad'iyah of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi afdal as-salatu was-salam, which he loved and he recited. And it's a dua that if you are not married, you should recite. If you are married and don't have children, you should read. And if you have children and you want them to be righteous, you should memorize and, of course, often mention this particular dua from the Quran. Chapter 25, Surah Al-Furqan, ayah number 74. وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. Now, memorize this line. Why is it very important? Because it will indeed formulate the very basis of the discussion that we're going to have, inshallah, this afternoon. Why is this dua important? How is it translated in English? Some people translate it as following. And it is they who say, who? Ibadur Rahman, the servants of the All-Merciful. Oh my Lord, grant for me. Hablana comes from hiba, which is gift. From our spouse and our children, those that bring honor and joy, pride, something that become an apple of our eyes. Qurrata a'yun. And make us leaders of the God-wary. وَجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. The problem with this translation is it's unfortunately very short-sighted, which brings about the whole question of what parenting is. My dear sisters and brothers, I invite you to undertake the journey of tarbiyah with a long-term vision, not a short-term objective. Meaning what? The ayah doesn't say, وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَأَوْلَادِنَا. What does it say? وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا. Rabbi habli min ladunka dhurriyatan tayyibah. Ibrahim salamullahi alayhi was a visionary man. This great prophet, he wasn't thinking about his children. He was thinking about generations until the day of Qiyamah. So, what does the ayah say? Ya Allah, I want not my children, not also their children, not also their children. I want generations of mine until Yawmul Hisab to be brilliant. So can you imagine when a husband and wife come together in a marital relationship and they say, we're going to have children and we want to make sure that the children are brought up in the correct way, tarbiyah. But the vision should be even more than this. It's not only my kids that I'm trying to make good. I am building the whole community. I am building a society. Remember this, because often our vision is very narrow. Quran invites us to have a wider vision. Imagine if every parent comes forward and says, my tarbiyah is to have generations of great, successful people. Until the day of Qiyamah, they'll be the source of happiness and pride for us. Now, the problem though, when it comes to this, is that sadly, if we ask ourselves and scrutinize our thoughts process, do we know enough from Quran of examples of parenting for us to take and apply into our lives? So if we are visionary in our parenting methods, whom in the Quran are great examples of people who are great parents? Interestingly, if you examine the whole Quran, you'll find the conversations between parents and children is primarily focused between men, the fathers, and their sons. But this doesn't necessarily mean that this is the primary objective or the primary responsibility. But it so happens because of the conversations that take place between the prophets and their sons at the first level. One of the most inspirational stories with parenting in the Quran is the ayat that was beautifully just recited, and that's Luqman Al-Hakim. Of course, many of our ulama, if not the majority, don't believe he was a prophet. He was a righteous individual, Abdun Salih. He was very, very wise. But I'd like to draw, I don't want to go through his story in detail, but just one important lesson, practical lesson that I'd like you to take away, because I can see the challenge in today's methodology of parenting, which is not following the Quranic injunction, which is what? Today as parents, what is the first thing that we teach our children in relation to Islam? Salah, wudu, tahara, don't say this, make sure you do this, etc. Yes? The wajibat and the muharramat, the halal and the haram, from a young age, because we want them to do the right things. Okay? You must do this, you must not do this, this is how you should do this, you shouldn't. Is this what the Quran wants us to do? Not really. There is a problem. You might say to me, am I not supposed to teach my children what's right and wrong from the beginning as far as ahkam? Not from the beginning. There's something that needs to be taught before it. وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ يَا بُنَيَّ أَقِمِ الصَّلَاةِ. Is that what he says? Is that what the Quran says? No, not at all. There is something that comes before the do's and don'ts, which today, as a result of this lacking, when our children become 15, 16, or even younger, when they're 13, 14, and they're exposed more to the outside world, their inner belief, their aqeedah, their understanding of God is shaken, and all of a sudden they take off their hijab, they stop praying, they listen to haram music, they have illicit relationships, and then the phone call is made to the ulama, please save me. I'm sorry, but the ship has sailed. Sometimes it's too late. There was something before that didn't happen. Do you know what didn't happen? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Luqman identified the priority from a young age to establish. And that's what? That's the aqeedah, the belief system. Do you know why today we have a crisis in our youth and as far as their relationship with deen, with religion? Is because the basis by which they were taught and educated is weak and feeble. They were told that you must pray and wear hijab, but why? Don't ask. They were told you must do this and that, but what is this God? How is my relationship with God? What is this belief? Why is it so important? That's not there, or it's not emphasized enough. Quran tells us the first thing Luqman did, Ya bunayya la tushrik billah. That's the first thing. Yes? Then, Ya bunayya aqim as-salat. وَأَمُرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَانْهَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. Then it comes later. Once you have the basis, yes? Once you have the very foundations, if you build on this foundation, everything else will become easier, will flow a little bit more. Now, what kind of parent are you? You say to me, what do you mean? Today, behavioral scientists, psychology, sociology, all these kind of different human sciences have come together with classification of parenting types and styles. The Quran 1400 years ago has highlighted this, but before I tell you what the Quran says, I'd like to tell you or explain 3 types of parents that exist. And we need to be able to somehow navigate ourselves between these 3 different types to understand what's right and what's wrong, and how do we change our styles accordingly. Now, the first style of parenthood is known as authoritarian style. This is very common in many communities in the Middle East, India, Pakistan. The authoritarian style is the following. The father or the mother basically ensures that the child will do whatever they say regardless. And everything works through force or reward. There is no consultation, there is no discussion. It's my way or the highway. And the authoritarian parent makes sure that this works, otherwise there is what? There is a failure in every sense of the word. Let me give you an example so that you can understand what is an authoritarian father or a mother in a typical setup. A father or a mother says to her son, who's maybe 10, I'd like you to clean your room. It's too messy. They come a bit later and they see that the child is watching, for example, hockey. I was in the UK, I'd say watching soccer, but not many people watch soccer here, sadly. And they're watching hockey, for example. So the father and the mother says, I told you to clean your room. The child says, I'll do it afterwards. It's a very important game, right? I don't know the teams here, so I can't mention them. But it's a very important game, I have to watch this. An authoritarian father or a mother says, if you don't stand up now and go and clean your room, you're banned from watching hockey for the next week. So the child switches the TV, goes reluctantly, but as they grow, they are being trained that that's the only way that things will happen, by force. That's the only way that things can indeed take place. So, the parents make all the decisions. The parents expect the kids to follow without asking any questions. Yes, and there is this high expectation, and they will only be either punished or rewarded. That's whom an authoritarian parent. There is a second type of parent. This type of parent is called permissive. What's a permissive parent? Let's take an example of the same situation. The mother comes, sees her son, he is watching hockey. She says to him, son, I told you to clean your room. Why didn't you do it? Oh, I'm busy. I'm watching the game. No problem. I'll do it for you. It's okay, Habibi. It's fine. You stay. You enjoy. I don't want... A permissive father or mother is lenient, doesn't impose rules, avoids confrontation, wants the happiness of their children no matter what. Okay? And the key thing is they don't want their kids to hate them. In my humble opinion, there is a shift in the parenting style from authoritarian to permissive in the Western world. Do you know what's happened? As a result of the issues of the stick, you know, the punishment, you know, the Iraqis amongst you know, in Iraq we have this very famous proverb regarding a man by the name of Mullah Alawi. You know, we have this thing called Chifyan Shar Mullah Alawi. Just to put you in the context, what does it mean? This Mullah Alawi, he used to have kids, and he used to say to them, if you don't pray, there's only one outcome. It's either sandals or the stick. You've got to pray, right? You have to do it. So they were scared. So what they used to do, of course in Iraq and many places, they have these houses where there is a satah, there's a roof. And they used to sleep because it's summer, it's hot. So they sleep at the roof. So they would have between them plan. Every morning, one of them only wakes up, the rest are asleep. And they go and there's a pipe, you know, water pipe. So they pour the water. So their father is sleeping at the downstairs. So he hears the water being drained. So he thinks that they're doing wudu for salah. So he says, okay, fine, they're praying. And they take this every day. One of them wakes up, pours water, and the rest are asleep. No salah. One day he decides to check up on them. He goes up to the roof and he sees them all asleep. One of them is pouring water. He says to them, what are you doing? This salah is wajib. Why are you not doing it? He said, we're doing it to avoid the evil of Mullah Alawi. Shufyan Shar Mullah Alawi. We're not doing it because of Allah. We're scared of you. So we pour this water. Now, what's happened in this day and age is, as a result of this type of parenting, the younger generation parenting has now become permissive. Why? They're scared of authorities. They're scared of their kids, for example, rebelling against Islam and faith. So they say, you know what, whenever you're ready. Hijab, whenever you're ready. Salah, when you feel like it. Right? This is also a problem. This is also something that may not necessarily work. Now, what's the best type of parenting that today has been shown to be the most successful? This is the Quranic model that today scientists have spoken about, but Quran has tackled and described 1400 years ago. It's called authoritative parenting. I know these are quite difficult terms. I wish I knew them in French, but I don't. Right? This term means what? Please listen to this. Authoritative, not authoritarian. Different. Now, an authoritative parent is a parent who seeks the view of the child, maintains personal authority, but seeks problem solving. An authoritative parent, they see mistakes as a great way to learn. They care about long-term parenting, not short-term. And they empower the children to develop self-discipline and personal responsibility for actions. Listen to the example that I've just given and how an authoritative parent deals with this. A mother comes and says, my dear son, you haven't tidied up your room. He says, I'm watching hockey. She comes and sits right next to him, looks him up in the eye in the same level, and says, are you able to give me 5 minutes, just 5 minutes? He says, okay. He says, can I ask you why you didn't do the room? Can you tell me why? And the child would say, well, I wasn't bothered. She says, do you think this is okay? What do you think? Tell me, is this something that should happen? Would you like this something that happens all the time? Do you think this is something that should take place? How do you think you can rectify this? What's your solution to this? So there is a plan to somehow find some solutions beyond the enforcement and giving the answers to the child, enabling them to utilize their thinking and giving them self-confidence. Now I know sometimes we do need authoritarian and sometimes we need permissive. This is not a perfect model. There's no way that you can be an authoritative parent all the time because kids are kids. But the predominant style should be towards this. Now, you ask me very briefly, how does the Quran tackle this? How does it encourage us to become authoritative parents in this particular way? Well, there are fundamental qualities of an authoritative parent that the Quran encourages us to exhibit as father and mother. And the most important amongst them, which today over 600 studies have shown to be the most crucial factor in successful parenting. 600 studies I've seen. It's called the super protective factor. And this is what? It's child connectedness. When the father or the mother has a connection with the child. When you have that connection, everything else becomes easier. Now you say to me, that's a very difficult thing to achieve. How do I become connected to my child? What is the Quranic model of seeking that irtibat, that kind of link that we are supposed to develop between ourselves and our children? How? What's the recommendation? See, in every conversation relating to parenting in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that prophet or that individual doesn't say son. Ismail, Ibrahim, Yaqub, Yusuf, Luqman and his son, Dawood, Sulaiman. All these examples in the Quran of the conversation between parents and their children, every single one of them, every prophet uses a terminology of love. Ya bunay, not ya waladi or just waladi. Those who know Arabic, they know that bunay is an expression in Arabic which denotes compassion, denotes a sense of love and mercy. It's translated as my dear son, not just my son, for example. This concept of enhancing the relationship and connectedness between the parent and the child through love is key. Why? In this day and age that everyone's so busy, it's become very difficult to see compassionate families. For example, fathers in particular. Mothers, mashallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created them with that innate emotional ability to connect and to show love and a lot of affinity. But sometimes fathers, when they're in a kind of a household, they act like they're just a wall. It's needed for the house to stay, but that's it. They're just supporting financially, and they're not really present. What do we mean present? There's a nice story that once a child asked their father for them to spend time. And the father said, I'm too busy. I don't have time. I'm at work, then I have other commitments. So the child kept saying, please, please, can you play with me? Can you come, and spend time with me? Father says no. One day, the child came to the father with an envelope, 6, 7-year-old, and said, Father, this is for you. So the father opens the envelope and he finds $20 inside. He says, what's this money? He says, this is money I've been saving up to get 1 hour of your time. Maybe you can give me 1 hour. of your time. Children absolutely love the time and the attention that they would get from their parents, especially from their fathers. The mothers, many times they get them. But when the father invests in that relationship by spending time, by taking their kids out, by playing with them, by avoiding all kinds of distractions using phones, because there are people today who say, I spend time with my children, but they're on their phone, or they're multitasking. And the child then immediately sees that you're not with them. You're not really invested in them. Children love to see their fathers or their mothers pay particular attention to their needs. And it's an innate need for the child, and it's something that needs to be provided. If I want that connection, I need to invest in time. I need to ensure that I enhance this love. You see, in the school of Ahl al-Bayt, we have this concept of the mawadda. قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ بِالْقُرْبَى. Yes, the idea of the spending of time in a family environment is so crucial to ensure there is a successful long-term relationship between the father and indeed the mother. Now, in order for this to succeed, in order for this connection to be enhanced, there are a number of things that must be avoided. I'll just complete with this. There are often mistakes that parents do that sadly push back the whole process of the child-parent connectedness. And these are mistakes also highlighted in Islamic literature, because sometimes these mistakes are done because and this is a separate subject, and inshallah maybe in the future with this blessed academy and other workshops that you can do, there is a fascinating new area of study now called reparenting. Do you know what this is? Has anyone come across the term reparenting? Basically, us as adults, we've lived our lives and been taught in a particular way. And when we come to have our own children, sometimes we like to bring them up the way we have been brought up, number one. Number two, more importantly, we carry with ourselves baggage and unmet needs. And as a result, we try to force our children to have those needs that we didn't have. But maybe the children don't need it. I'll give you an example. There was a father who once came to see me and said, you know, when I was a child, when I was a teenager, my father did not allow me to go to sports events. Because he says, these sports events, there are all kinds of people drinking alcohol, it's not the right environment. He said, I was desperate and I wanted him to take me out. It's so wonderful for the father to take the son and, you know, and to spend time with the daughter and to take him to this event. But he never did. Until I became a father and I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take my child to every sports event. And now my son says, I don't want this event. I don't want to go with you so many times. And he says, what's wrong with that? I think it's amazing, but my kid doesn't appreciate it. Well, because you didn't have it, you want to make sure your kid has it, and you're enforcing it on your child. So we sometimes need what's known as the reparenting ourselves as parents to ensure that any unmet needs are not inflicted upon our children unnecessarily. But very, very briefly, I'm going to mention some mistakes that parents make, which, of course, the religion of Islam has highlighted to be problematic in nurturing and bringing up this generation that we have an important responsibility in this day and age. And remember, sometimes, unfortunately, our communities, when you speak to them and you say, why, for example, parents are not doing what they need to do, many of them, they say, because we are dependent primarily on M&Ms. You have M&Ms in Canada? Yes? Parents say all our solution lies with M&Ms. How? It's a chocolate, right? No, I don't mean the chocolate. I mean mimbar and madrasa. Mimbar and madrasa, there everyone seems to think that's the solution. So I'm not going to necessarily take the lead as a father or the mother. The lectures are amazing, alhamdulillah. The majalis, the husayniyat, the gatherings, the school, amazing. All this is brilliant, yes? But all of it starts at home. And if it doesn't start at home, then the rest will not achieve the particular desired goal. It will not be sufficient. They build on the foundations planted by both the father and the mother. Here are very briefly some mistakes that some people unfortunately do. Number one is when the father and the mother have completely different parenting strategies. And it becomes conflating, and it becomes hypocritical, and it becomes confusing for the children. They have to work as a team. They have to be there as part of a unit. Yes? The best role models of a parenting is whom? As Amir al-Mu'mineen and Sayyidatul Nisa Fatima, salamullahi alayhim. They both exactly knew what to do. I give you a story which is very inspirational for our children as well. We all know about the story where يُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. We've heard it so many times, but there is a different one. Once there was a man who came to the Holy Prophet Rasul al-A'zam Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He came to him and said, Ya Rasulullah, I am hungry and I am in need. Do you have any food? So he sent a message to his wives. Do you have any food? Of course, back in the time, they didn't have refrigerators, no freezers. So if the food is finished, it's finished. And they don't have like, local chicken and fries and things like this to buy from, right? If you don't have food, you don't have food. So the wife said to him, Ya Rasulullah, we don't have anything. So the Prophet said, go to the house of Ali and Fatima. He said to this man, go to the house of Ali and Fatima. And this is Ali, he will take you. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen said to him, come with me. Now, Sayyidatul Nisa did not know Imam Ali alayhi salam is going to bring a guest. But there is synchronization. The goal is to serve Allah. There is a joint effort, yes? So once he brings him, he goes to see her and says, do we have food? She says, we only have food for one person. Neither her, Imam Ali, Hassan and Hussein have eaten. But she doesn't say to him, listen, that's not the plan. We didn't agree this. Why did you bring him? Now we're all going to starve. How are we going to eat with this person? No. There is a unified vision when it comes to tarbiyah, when it comes to leading as role models. Just generosity. So what happens there? She says to him, this is what we're going to do. You're going to take the food. You're going to present it to this man. We are going to switch off all the candles so that it's dark. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, I will sit next to him. I will not eat. I will only watch him eat. He will not see me not eating, so that he doesn't feel that the food is not enough. So he will have it all by himself. Sayyidah Fatima says, I will take the children and I will put them to sleep hungry. In the morning, the Prophet of Islam sees Ali ibn Abi Talib, salamullahi alayhi, and says to him, Ya Ali, what did you do last night? He says, why? He said, there is a verse in the Quran that's been revealed in your merit. Chapter 59, verse number 9. وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. They prefer others over themselves, even though they needed it. They needed it. So there is what? The unity in the vision between the husband and wife. Number one. Number two, another mistake that happens is when we are seeking nurturing of our children, the vision or the presentation of Allah Jalla wa Ala is the wrong one. Is a harsh one, is a brutal one. We give the idea to our children sometimes that God is this kind of, astaghfirullah, this kind of monstrous being that's out there to catch you and out there to punish you and out there to hurt you. And so their understanding becomes that I will only perform my deen based on a God that I only fear, that's it. Not a God that I love. Not a God that I enjoy speaking to, or not a God that I enjoy being obedient towards. At the same time, the idea of bringing the children down to the extent that it impacts their self-confidence. Constant negativity and condemnation of the child is destructive behavior by the parents. Meaning what? A child is a child. They will naturally do things wrong. And a parent who is authoritative and long-term will use this opportunity for learning. But unfortunately, we have seen examples where parents look at the child and say, you're a disaster. you're a failure. You're this, you're that. So using terms not to criticize the act, but to bring down the very personality of the child. And that, unfortunately, has huge detrimental impact on the growth and the nurturing and the confidence of our children. The other thing that unfortunately sometimes happen is when we begin to teach our children to be completely dependent on us as parents. So we don't encourage them to be proactive and independent, but rather are quick to solve their problems, are quick to manage their issues, right? Once a person said, my son had a bike and came back crying from school or wherever they were. And I said, what's wrong? Why are you crying? He said, it's been stolen. They stole the bike. The wrong approach here is, don't worry, I'll buy you a new one. This is wrong. Because you're teaching the child, at times of hardship, you're always going to be there to take them out of difficulty. Later on, who's going to buy them a new car or anything else that they lose? Yes? So, being in the process of enabling them to think beyond the current process, the time and the challenges, is key for the parents to indeed navigate. Now, another very, very key thing is we must never humiliate them in front of others, especially children or other adults. We should be proud of them, praise them publicly, mention good traits of them. Yes, that's key. But also have a very vested interest in who their friends are. In this day and age, the role of friendship at school and at college and everywhere else is so key, because friends many a times determine the direction by which the children live their lives. If I have no idea about the presence of my children on social media, for example, and the interactions that happens there, if I have no idea who they're hanging out with, the type of people that they're spending time with, and so on and so forth, then unfortunately I will gradually lose that connection, that ability to be able to listen empathetically. The other key thing is, unfortunately, we are quick to judge our children. This listening is mentioned in the Quran before anything else. إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادِ. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says definitely the hearing. Why? We don't do what is known as active listening. Active listening means what? Empathetically trying to understand where our kids come from. Imagine you are in the kitchen or anywhere else, parents, fathers, whatever, and the child comes and says, can I speak to you? So we must leave everything and try to speak to them. Yes? Many times we don't try to understand their situation. Of course, it depends on the age. But being there for them is key. That's why today, many ulama have highlighted this and recommended that there should be, at least once a week, a gathering within the family where phones are put aside and everyone sits down and there is a regular topic that's discussed where everyone should share an opinion. Of course, it depends on the age of the children, but they come to a certain age where they begin to be opinionated and they have certain things that they want to say, right? So you need to create that environment where they are being listened to and they feel valuable members of the family. They go to majalis, alhamdulillah. They go to many different gatherings and settings. On the way back, yes, instead of listening to that nasheed or that latmiya, which is also good, maybe it's an opportunity to have a discussion. What did you learn? Tell me, what do you think about this? And so on and so forth. Children also go through trauma. Today, they see the horrifying images of what's happening, for example, in Gaza and in different parts of the world. And sometimes we underestimate the need for us to be able to have these conversations about what's happening in their own way. Right? Listening to their fears, listening to their concerns, being able to channel them in the right way as indeed adults. The final thing I'd like to mention, which is very, very important, my dear sisters and brothers, is in this day and age, we are being faced with a number of vital, very key topics of conversation we must not shy away from, awkward topics. And arguably, parenting in this day and age is probably the hardest it's ever been. And I know all the parents would say, no, This was not the case, you know, the 20 years ago parenting was probably as hard as this, but it's not a competition anyway. It's a difficult task. But having said that, today there are delicate issues that many people have to navigate when it comes to their faith and their identity as parents. I give you an example from my own life with my children. Once my son, at that time he was maybe about 7 or 8, he came to me and said to me, you know, I hear from the majalis, Ayyam Fatimiyya, that Sayyida Fatima salamullahi alayha was attacked in her house. Her rights were taken away. And I hear names that are mentioned regarding people who did this. First Khalifa, second Khalifa, this, that, the other. But I also hear at school and other times they're being talked about as great companions of the Prophet. So what is it? Which one is it? You know? How do we navigate through these sensitive areas, delicate subject? Today one of the most sensitive areas is this whole LGBTQ plus. Yes? This whole discussion has become one of the most challenging discussions, where if we don't shatter the taboo of these subjects and have serious, meaningful conversation depending on the age of the children, unfortunately we will lose them. I'll give you an example. I run courses online for boys, bulugh courses. And they are for boys who are from the age of 11 till 15. And it's several weeks on Zoom. And I have made it deliberate where I tell parents, anyone who wants their children to sign up for these courses, which highlight what does it mean at the time of bulugh, what are the changes you see in your body, physical, yes, changes. Also, what are things that you are supposed to be able to do now, understand, lots of questions and so on. I make it very clear from the beginning. My dear brother or sister, as a parent, I will discuss certain topics. For example, pornography. For example, masturbation. For example, and I hear some of the older parents, Astaghfirullah, I don't want my child to hear this. Which planet are you living in? You think that your child is not exposed to this kind of things out there? Right? If you feel so protective about your children, mashallah, but you're deceiving yourself. Because these topics are they're being exposed on movies, on Disney, on social media. It's out there. You need to be able to wake up, right? And realize these are challenges we have to face and discuss in the appropriate manner from an Islamic perspective. Yes? It's okay to be able to open up these topics as parents in the most suitable, respected manner. But don't leave it too late because, Wallah Mawlana, I can't, this is difficult, it's not a conversation I can have. My parents never spoke to me about it until I was 15 or 16. This is not the same thing. Now challenges are different. Now things need to be tackled in a different way. Absolute final message that I'd like you to inshallah, keep in your mind in this wonderful objective of parenting, and that is the following. Imam Al-Hadi salamullahi alayhi was a brilliant human being. You agree? He is the Imam Mafrood al-Ta'a. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen him as a representative of his. He is the grandfather of Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Ruhi wa arwah al-alameen lahu al-fida. Yes? But he had a child that went astray. Ja'far al-Kadhab. Nuh salamullahi alayhi. Quran mentions. So as parents, we've got to try our best. But don't freak out if things don't work out. You keep trying. Because some people then make it affect their mental health, make it affect their overall faith and relationship with God. Why is God doing this to me? Why is He testing me when my child doesn't pray, when my child doesn't do this, or is doing this, or has bad, for example, habits, or is onto drugs? It's all my fault. It's all this. I'm going Jahannam. Khalas. Calm down. It's okay. Sometimes things don't go the right way. Number one, don't give up. But number two, don't be necessarily so negative to think it's all your fault, or the fault of the wife or the family and so on. Look for avenues, seek help, assist, seek the guidance of ulama and experts in the community. And inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you tawfiq. As long as you have tried and placed the effort, then inshallah tawfiq is from Rabbul Alameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and grant you all the opportunity to serve and to become in the best possible way the khuddam of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhum as-salam in fulfilling the objectives of the tarbiyah and the nurturing according to the Quran and the Ahl al-Bayt alayhum as-salam. And my special dua and inshallah support for this institution and this school, the Academy Nour, inshallah, for it to be flourishing and growing from strength to strength, inshallah ta'ala, in this community and beyond. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.